And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China!
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China! All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China!
Russian.
Russia!
Italian.
Italy!
German.
Germany!
Swedish.
Sweden!
Korean.
Korea!
Egyptian.
Egypt!
Nigerian.
Nigeria!
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The 10 Sephirot. One popular interpretation shows these characteristics as a map of God's body. Kabbalists believe that if they can understand God's anatomy, they can learn how his powers work. These ancient drawings reveal that God's body is similar to humans. The top symbolizes God's head, which is the source of will, wisdom, and understanding. Below that are symmetrically arranged organs and limbs, representing love, power, beauty, eternity, and splendor. The most unusual part of the diagram contains sensual imagery. The ninth part of God, called the foundation, is the phallus, or procreative life force of the universe. But according to the Sephirot, God also has female components. The final element, often called Shekinah, was depicted as the feminine half of God.
This is how the Zohar interprets the opening words of Genesis. The Hebrew is Bereshit bara Elohim, which we usually translate, in the beginning, God created. But the Zohar insists on reading the words in the precise order in which they appear in Hebrew. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, it created, Elohim, God. In the beginning, it created God. The Zohar takes that to mean, in the beginning, infinity created God. Now, what could that possibly mean? God is now the object of the verse, not the subject, which sounds impossible or heretical, but the Zohar, I think, is saying that infinity is the true reality of God. Anything else that we call God is puny compared to that. That's our own imagination or our own estimate of what God could be.
One of the great Tzvat rituals was the rite, the cult, shall I say, of the Shekinah and the cult of the divine marriage. Now, people don't really think about this when they go to temple in America and rise at the end of a certain hymn and bow and sing, "Come, O bride, come, O bride." but in fact the Tzfat Kabbalists viewed the Friday night service and meal as a wedding feast, when the divine parts of God above unified with the earthly feminine aspect of God in the world, the Shekinah, and they had sexual union on Friday night. And this has survived into general Jewish practice to this day.
Here's a chart that summarizes vowel class and length. And you can see across the top the three classes, ah, e, and u, and then down the side the four lengths, long, medium, short, and very short. So let's just go over this chart. We'll start with the ah class vowels. The long vowel is cholam vav, and you'll recall that this says O as in snow. Now you might wonder why an O vowel is in the ah class, and this is because of historical considerations. Originally there was no O sound in Hebrew. Everything that is a cholam vav used to be a long ah. If you know the Hebrew word for peace, it's shalom. If you know the Arabic word for peace, it's salam. And that long ah in Arabic is now an O in Hebrew. And so historically, cholam vav was a long ah class vowel, and that's why we put it here.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Want to say shalom lach mash parcha, which means simply, is it well with you, family? And I hope and pray that it is well with you guys. And so I decided to push things up an hour and a half. Normally I start the playbook about 10:30, but I decided to push it up to 9 o'clock. So I know some of our usual watchers that support the program may expect to come later and may be a little surprised that I'm coming in a little earlier. The reason for that is I have some things that I'm pressing, some tasks that I have to prepare for this upcoming Monday. So I have to do some things along, really turn my attention towards those things in preparation for a task on Monday. So I decided to push this up early because I didn't want to cancel the teaching. So I just decided to push it up early so that way I can get back to doing that task as well. So tonight we're going to kick off, we're going to jumpstart the series, Words of Confusion. So this week we're going to deal with the word church. We're going to deal with the word church. And if you guys have a word that's kind of confusing to you, feel free to send it to me so that way I can add it to this series, Word of Confusion. This week, again, we're dealing with the word church. Is it the people? Is it the building? What's the origins of this word? So we have a lot to cover in this lesson. So before we get started here, I want to give some shout outs here like I would normally do. And again, for those that are coming in late, or, technically you're not late, you're just coming in. I just started early, a little earlier than the norm. All right. So let me give some shout outs to those that are here. I want to say shalom to Devorah Cotton. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Shalom to Sister Joy. Appreciate you. Appreciate your support. Lisa Jackson. I want to say peace and blessings. Shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Israelite Wife. I want to say shalom to you. We also had B1 Queens Island. Okay, New York. All right. I want to say peace and blessings. Shalom to you. Lachelle Patterson, I want to say peace and blessings to you, sis. Appreciate you as well. Minister Dave Post, want to say shalom to you as well. Let's see here. Lemuria Johnson, want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Dre Lee said, oh no, did I miss it? No, you didn't miss. We just started early, so you're right on time. Sheila, want to say peace and blessings to you. Peacemaker, shalom to you. Appreciate the support. Who else do we have here? Let's see. Smitty Kwapa, want to say shalom to you. Darnell Blackshear, want to say peace and blessings to you. Up next, want to say shalom to you as well. Let's see here. Mina Miller, want to say, or Mina Miller, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Want to say peace and blessings to you as well. Latan Ya, want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? And family, if I missed any of you guys, do not charge it to my heart. Like the old school would say, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Peacemaking music, Kabbalah, chakra system, Indian, and Talmudic. Wow. So yeah, it's a lot with the videos that I shared earlier, and we're going to delve into those as well when we get into the teachings that I did on Halloween. And it's a 5-part series, and we're going to touch on each one of these systems for us in terms of these key, how can I put it, the key instruments or objects of these different systems, like the Kabbalah, when you start dealing with the 10 Sephira, which some other religions call the tree of life. You'll see that same diagram in Hinduism, for us to mysticism over there. Kemet, you'll see that chart in other mystical belief systems. So we're going to deal with that up in this upcoming month here. All right. I want to say peace and blessings to Esther, Sister Esther, Prisoner of Hope. Want to say greetings to you as well. Zena Motley, want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? I think I got everyone. And those that are jumping in, forgive me if I don't catch your name in the beginning. I'll try to do it as we conclude. Want to say Yakoba, want to say Shalom, Mash Pakab, Baruch, Atah, Israel. So blessings, that's what this says right here. Blessings to you, basically, Yashra'al. So Shalom, is it well, family? Blessings to you. Blessings, you, Israel, right? Okay, so let's see here. Matith Yahu ben Israel, want to say shalom to you as well. Well, shalom to you. Kwam Yashara'al, rise up, Israel. That's right, rise up. All right, let's see here. Donna Hall, want to say peace and blessings to you. Jeremiah Hopewell, Howell. Been a long time since we connected, my brother. Hope all is well with you. And got to get you on here soon. Been a while since I had you on here. So who else do we have here? Peace and blessings to you again. Let's see here. All right, Shirley Greer, want to say peace and blessings to you. Kenita Lattimore, souls of our ancestors, appreciate you, sis, and all that you do and the support that you've been doing on, not just this platform, but just how you support others as well. Really appreciate your support of your people. I really appreciate it. And so, family, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. And if I didn't catch your name going through the roll call, so to speak, please do not charge it to my heart, charge it to my head, old school, because others are popping in right now. So I don't want to prolong the teaching. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and put this banner up for those that want to know how to connect with me offline. And you see the email address here, the subscription, We Woke Now. And those that wanted to bless what we're doing here, feel free to do so. If you want to sow a seed, that's up to you. Not pressed for it, but if you do, that's fine. So, but when I say I'm not pressed for it, greatly appreciative, but that's not something that I have to go over the top to try to push and promote. If you choose to want to be a blessing to the works here at PFR, feel free to do so. If not, no hard feelings, because just your support of just watching the video says a lot. So share the video, hit the like button. That does a lot. That goes a long way. All right. So let's go and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and maximize the screen so that way we can get right into the teaching here. All right. So this is episode 1, Words of Confusion, episode 1 of the series, Words of Confusion, right? The church, is it the people or is it the building, right? Is it the people or is it the building? Now, guys, you can put 1 inside the chat if you agree with this. How many of you guys inside the church, deep down inside, when you was coming up in Christianity, deep down inside, you was confused whether the church is the people or whether or not the church is a building. Because one minute you hear them say it's all about the people, but then they have a church building fund, right? Then he says, what is it? What is the church? Is this something that the Messiah spoke when we see him, when we see these words in Matthew's, the testimony of Matthew? So if you was kind of confused on this word, if this was one of those words of confusion, just type one. It's nothing to be ashamed, because I was like to myself, even like, wait a minute, is that, what is the church? And this is me growing up in the church. I came up Baptist, went to school and everything, did the whole seminary thing and got my degree, concentrated in theology. Right. But you still try to figure out what is the church. So don't feel like you're by yourself. And by you guys typing one inside the comment section, guess what you're doing? You're showing those that's going to come back and watch this video. You're going to let them know that they were not alone. They are not by themselves. And I can guarantee you that there are many still within Christianity, still trying to figure out what is the church. And we're going to give proper clarity on what the word church is, its origins, and give you clarity in the end of what the Messiah would have actually stated. All right. So the origins of the church building fund. Since I brought it up, let me give you the origin. Let me give you the original church building fund. Let me just give you a little, geeky information so that way you guys can understand. What you see on your screen, right? This backdrop here, it is called the letter of indulgence, right? That in letter of indulgence, that's what this letter is in the back. Now, let me give you a little history on that letter of indulgence, right? Let's see what it says here. Let me give you information on here. So the title of this is just some of the bullets here. Document of the month, right? From this source here, Exodus Record Office blog over in the UK. So they were highlighting this particular document, right, for this particular month. And what's interesting about this document, as I'm going to read here, it says, our document of the month for August 2017 is a medieval indulgence. In other words, a certificate granted by the Catholic Church to absolve the bearer of sin and reduce any punishment they would receive either in this life, or in purgatory. The document dates from 1480, but we have chosen to highlight it in 2017 because this marks 500 years since Martin Luther's publication of his 95 Theses, an event which is generally seen as the beginning of the Protestant Reformation in Europe. The 95 Theses is also known as the Disputation on the Power of Indulgences, and criticize the way the Catholic Church was granting these documents. So indulgences had originally been intended to be a reward for piety and good deeds, but the system had become increasingly commercialized, with indulgences being sold. So in 1517, Pope Leo X offered indulgences to those who contributed alms. See, notice what we're dealing with here. Notice what it says here. Towards the rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Or Basilica, excuse me if I'm butchering the name, forgive me, family. But anyway, right? But notice what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the letter of indulgence. In other words, this is the original church building fund. This is them allowing people to buy certificates, basically a get out of jail free card, right? A get out of jail free card to doing whatever. All they had to do was buy this letter, right? Buy this certificate, and they were automatically forgiven for whatever. And actually, this is the original beef, right? This is what really triggered the Reformation movement. The letter of indulgence, the disagreement of how the Catholic Church, per se, were going over the top with allowing people to purchase their way into the kingdom, basically. Just a little history I want to share. So let's go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 1 through 5. Let's start here because I'm sure you guys are familiar with this text, but this is a text that I highlight whenever I'm dealing with identity, whenever I'm dealing with heritage, because you'll hear all the time that, especially when you're dealing with Christianity, those within Christianity, they will tell you that identity is not important. Now, how many times have you guys heard that, or have you guys ever heard that? If you heard that from within the church, that identity is not important, go ahead and put one inside the comment section. If you guys have heard this, that identity is not important, go ahead and type one inside the chat. So again, this is what I just shared with you. The letter of indulgence is the original building fund. All right. So you guys done heard this. This is, you hear this a lot. Identity doesn't matter as long as your identity is established through Jesus. Matter of fact, I'm going to add that even to our words of confusion. We'll add Jesus to there too. All right. But again, this is something that we've all have heard, right? We've heard that. Well, guess what? Just this transliterated word Genesis debunks that, because the word Genesis means beginning, but also begat. The word Genesis, the primitive root word for Genesis, or the Proto-Indo-European word, and I'm going to explain that shortly, Genesis comes from the word gene, as well as the word generic comes from the word gene, which means what? To beget. So when we read the book of Genesis, especially when we get to chapter 10, is giving us a way to identify who's who. So identity is very important because the transliterated name itself tells you, right? The created beginning. All right. So let's go to the text. Starting at verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the reason why I'm pronouncing Ham the way that I'm pronouncing it, so that way it minimizes any confusion, because there are some that teach that Abraham, just because of his name Abraham, say that he was part Shemitic and part Hamitic because of Ham, the word Ham there, right? The prefix, when actually the actual pronunciation of Noah's son is not Ham, it's Ham, right? I'll say it again. It's not Ham, it's Ham, right? And you're not going to see in the Israeli language, the pronunciation of this letter will be the Chet, right? And in the ancient pronunciation is Kaf. But notice what I'm saying, Ka, right? So his actual name is Kam. Just like when you say Kemet is actually Kamat, right? So notice how I'm pronouncing that, because you see the Ka at the beginning. So Abraham's name, you would not see in ancient Hebrew, the Ka there. All right. But anyway, just a little helpful information for if anyone that will tell you that Abraham's name is proof that he was half Shemitic and half Hamitic. All right. So I just gave you a little nugget there. So let's read it again. So now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and unto them were the sons born of the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer. We see Ashkenaz. And we'll deal with that another time, but not tonight. Riphath, Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, right? The Greeks, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his language, tongues, after their families and their nations. This is important, right? In their lands, Aratazah or Arats, in the Israeli language, Eretz, everyone after his tongue, Lashan, after their families, Mashpachah, some of you guys would say Mispachah, and their nations. So we see in this chapter, when I actually teach about identity, this is where I would take everyone to. And I taught the same message for 4 years, teaching how to actually articulate what identity is according to scripture. We're not going to do that tonight. We'll do that another time. So all of Noah's sons had a language that was among them that developed, right? That began to, how can I put it, evolve based upon their separations. Because Noah's sons, along with his father and mother, they spoke the same language, but they began to what? Divide. They began to, as they began to divide in their own territories as far as lands, right? They began to establish what? Their offsprings, their families, right? So they began to develop their language based upon them isolating or separating themselves. So all of Noah's sons had their own land, they had their own language, and they had their own families, which these are the three pillars to what constitutes a nation to be a nation. All right. So we saw the word Ashkenaz, Germany. We also saw Meshech, right, which is Moscow. We also saw in this text Togarmah, which is Armenians, German, and also Turkey as well. We also saw inside the scripture Madai, in other words, the Medes, Persia, and peoples of India. We also saw Gomer, right? People living in the area of the Black Sea, Germany, and Wales. Just giving you a little breakdown of some of the names that you saw, just so you can start actually pinpointing some of the territories. All right, so the Isles of the Gentiles, the Isles of the Gentiles. This is the etymology dictionary definition of isle. So you see isle, island, and it says a word of uncertain origins. But the key here says the open sea. So this is saying that they were divided among what? The waters. The Isle of the Gentiles, right? The open sea. So Japheth, just based off of what I share with you, just based off of the studies from a biblical perspective, Japheth is the father of the Indo-Europeans or Proto-Indo-Europeans. Now let me see here. Yeah, I don't see those terms here like Proto-Indo-European. That's why I was checking here, which is all good. So we'll get there. I'll explain this more. And what I want to also talk to you about is the influence of the Norse, right? We're going to deal with the English language. I did a whole series on the deception of the English language. But right now I want to establish first Japheth, right? The Proto-Indo-Europeans. I want to also deal with the language, which is the English language is one of those languages, the Germanic language, and we're going to explain that shortly. But they also had a belief system, especially when we start dealing with the Germanic trunk. And that is the Norse system. So I want to deal with the influence of the Norse. let's deal with the influence of the Norse religion. Let's deal with that, because the Norse religion is heavily influential over Christmas, right? Because that's filled with the Norse Christmas. St. Patrick, the influence is heavily over Easter. And guess what? It's over the word church as well. The word God is Norse, but we'll deal with that another time. But God is Norse. The word Lord really is a political position. But think about the influence of us. We would rather say Lord than Yah or Yahweh. Some of you guys would say Yahweh. Some would say Yahoo, wherever you want to go with, even though we teach here Yahweh, which I can give you proof of that name, but not getting into all of that. We could just all agree to say Yah. At least all of us will agree that the short form of his name is Yah. But the ancient Israelites never said God. So why is it that people would rather say God than Yah? Why would people would rather say Lord than Yah? That's because when we start dealing with regurgitating something over and over again, being pre-programmed, this was what comes with the territory. And we could also contribute it to what is called syncretism. All right, so let's deal with this here. Let me read the bullet here. I'm not going to read the whole article. This is just a bullet. But it says here, how Norse mythology shaped the modern culture. Let me say that again. How the Norse mythology shaped the modern culture. Norse mythology is the study of the myths prevailing in where? The Germanic countries. Remember, we just talked about that a little bit. It is a subset of German mythology, and it can be considered as the overall term for myths, beliefs, and legends about the supernatural beings of Norse pagans. Let me read it one more time. Norse mythology is the study of the myths prevailing in Germanic countries. It is a subset of German mythology, and it can be considered as the overall term for myths, beliefs, and legends about the supernatural beings of Norse pagans. So I want to reiterate this point again. This is just a quote from what I just read. The study, and this is dealing with the Norse, the study of the myths prevailing in Germanic countries. It is a subset of German mythology, and it can be considered as the overall term for myths. Now, this is coming from the New World Encyclopedia, and this is what it tells you about the Norse mythology. Now, here's some of the influence, as you're going to see here inside this article here, or should I say this online source, this online encyclopedia, right? Within Norse mythology, human sacrifice, a unique eyewitness account of Germanic human sacrifice survives in Ibn Fatlin's account of a Rush ship burial, where a slave girl had volunteered to accompany her lord to the next world. More indirect accounts are given by Tacitus, Saxo. So we see human sacrifice. We see the Norse mythology. And I want to make this clear too. Every culture, right? Every nation, like when we look at the Greeks, they have their language that's going to reflect their culture. It's going to reflect their deities. It's going to reflect their culture. Likewise, when we deal with German, we deal with the Germanic language, they're going to have a reflection of what? The Norse, which was their primary belief system, their deities, right? Likewise, Israel has a language that is a reflection that's customized for our culture, for our Most High. And we have designated names. And they did not use the term God. They did not use the term Lord. Those are not words that originated in Hebrew. All right. But anyway, more indirect accounts are given by Tacitus, Saxo. But then in this article, it gives modern influences. Right now, notice this this bullet here. Notice what it says. The gods of Norse and Germanic mythology have left numerous traces and elements of everyday life in most Western countries, especially those who use a Germanic language. Let me read that again. The gods of the Norse and Germanic mythology have left numerous traces and elements of everyday life in most Western countries, especially those who use a Germanic language. An example of this is found in some of the names of the days of the weeks. Right? This is of what? Germanic origin. Like this is what this article is just stating right here. Some of it traces, some of the elements are still around us, all around us when we look at the days of the weeks. They used to be they used to refer to them, like the stars and the planets like Venus and all of that. So as you see here, example: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. But eventually, some of the names, an example for Tuesday through Friday, were replaced with the names of divine Germanic equivalents. Right? See, when you really start studying Moses, and I'm not getting to anyone after Moses, I'm just going to focus on Moses. Moses always used numbers to highlight the days of the week and the days of the months. He'll say the first month, the second month, the third month, or the first day of the week, the second day of the week. The only day that there was a name, a label associated with was the Shabbat. But he used the first day of the week. He used those terms. Abib, right? That's not a name of a month. That is the name of a season. All right. So I want to make sure you guys understand this, family, because you'll start understanding the systematic way of how we were introduced to these words, and don't even realize a lot of these words is what are causing a lot of problems among our community, among those that genuinely want to learn how to read the text. So that's why I want to really point these things out, because again, some may look at me teaching this like, hey, it doesn't matter. The Most High can sort it out. But there's a reason why he made it clear what his name is in Exodus chapter 15. He wanted to make sure, and he also said, don't even mention any other name, any reference to another deity. But every day, even inside our translations of the scriptures, guess what we see? We see God. And God is a Germanic word that in the singular is Gott, in the plural is Gotter, and is dealing with the Norse gods or the Norse deities. But we are reciting it right now. When I say we, many people that are toting this the Bible, toting this word, even those that say that they are awakened, they still use God. They still use Lord. As for me, with all the things that the Most High has done for me, done for my house, I want to know his real name. And I'm going to reference his real name. I'm not going to reference words that was not even spoken in the antiquities. And it's a fact that it's written, right? It's documented that the Israelites during the time of the Messiah, they spoke Hebrew to each other. Okay. So again, as you see here, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. See, all of these were referring to what? Stars, moons, right? Planets, But eventually, some of the names for Tuesday through Friday, from Tuesday through Friday, those 5 days, guess what? Those are names of Germanic deities. So when you say these names, guess what you're doing? You're actually reiterating, you are actually quoting these names. Names have meanings, family, have meanings. But anyway, eventually, going to reiterate some of the points that I just read, but eventually some of the names of the week were replaced with the names of divine Germanic equivalents. And when you understand the Hebrew calendar that many are being taught, those names point to Babylonian deities. Those names, anyway, let me stop. I want to go geek mode and get sidetracked. We'll deal with that another time. So let's deal with the evolution of the English language. The evolution of the English language. The English language and most European languages traces its original roots back to a Neolithic, in other words, late Stone Age people known as the Indo-Europeans or Proto-Indo-Europeans. This is where you get the acronym PI, right? Not dealing with, Einstein, right? Not dealing with that. Not dealing with a mathematic equation when you start getting into the square roots and all that other stuff. Proto-Indo-European PI, who lived in Eastern Europe and Central Asia for some time after 5000 BC. So let's now deal with the spread of the Proto-Indo-Europeans or the Indo-European. Let's deal with this now. So between 3500 BC and 2500 BC, the Indo-Europeans, in other words, the descendants of Japheth, began to travel across Europe and Asia in search of new pastures and honey grounds. And their languages developed and diverged in isolation. By around 1000 BC, the original Indo-European language had split into a dozen or more major language groups or families, the main groups being Hellenic, Italic, Indo-Iranian, Celtic, Germanic, Armenian, Balto-Slavic, and Albanian. Now, let me give you an example of this. I'm going to pull up a tree here. And if you go back and watch this video, if you're not on a large computer or a large monitor to see this, I encourage you to do so. So that way you can see the fullness of this. This is the Proto-Indo-European tree of languages, the languages that developed among the descendants of Japheth, right? You see here at the bottom, the trunk, Proto-Indo-European, the stump, right? But then you see it breaks off into 4 trunks. This is the stump, but then you see 4 trunks. See, if you really want to start identifying who's who, look at the language. See, many of us go off of just chase after DNA, but also you can start understanding who's who based upon language, which is interesting here, right? If we look at the Balto-Slavic Germanic, you see how it breaks off into 2 trunks, the Proto-Germanic and also Balto-Slavic. So they're still part of the same trunk, but it just branched off into 2. And you'll see their belief systems are similar. But this is another one I want to point out when you see Ariano-Greco-Armenic. Now, if we go here, we see, if we go to the right, we see the Greek. Then we see the 4 branches of the Greek, right? But then if we go to the right here, I'm just showing you with my mouse, Armeno-Aryan, right? And if we stay to the right, you see Indo-Irani, and then you see how that's split into 2 branches. You see Old Iranian, which I mentioned, which you see Iranian up here. But notice what you see, Sanskrit. What group of people speak and write Sanskrit? And why are they listed under the Proto-Indo-European tree of languages? See, this is where we have to go deeper with our understanding and teaching. And this is a fact. Those from India, when they come to this country, they classify themselves as being Caucasians. They classify themselves as being white in this country. This is a fact. All right. So you don't have to just focus on DNA, but you can also go into the languages and really start identifying who's who. All right. So when we go to the left here of this Balto-Slavo-Germanic trunk, we go to the left, we see Proto-Germanic. And you'll see this a lot in like etymology dictionaries. You'll see Proto-Indo-European primarily, and you'll see Proto-Germanic. So this is giving you an idea what that is. So Proto-Germanic will break off into two branches, Western and Northern Germanic. If you go with the Western, you'll see Gothic, or should I say Northern rather, you see Gothic. You see a branch for Danish, Swedish, Icelandic, Norwegian. But if we go to the Western Germanic, you see Flemish, Dutch, Low German. We see High German, Frisian, and notice we see English. So English is a language that branched out of German or the Germanic language, the Western Germanic language. Ultimately, the Proto-Germanic language, right? That trunk, which comes from the Balto-Slavo-Germanic. So we see the Germanic on this portion of the trunk, but then we see the Slavic over here. And then you see the different languages that comes with that. All right. So again, this is all the language of Japheth, Proto-Indo-European. So let's deal with the Old English, right? Who primarily spoke and used the Old English. We see the Angles and the Saxons. And for those that are not familiar, the Anglos and the Saxons, they are two separate people. They're not one group, because some would say the Anglos and Saxons. No, they are two separate groups. All right? They're two separate groups. So we have the Angles and the Saxons. We also have the Jutes. And I encourage you guys, look up the etymology of the word Jutes, and it will surprise you. I'm not going to give out the answer. On your own time, do the etymology of the word Jutes, and that's going to be an eye-opener to many of you. But then we also see the Vikings. That's why I have the Vikings, the V here, and I have in the background, you see from the series, The Vikings. I did that so that way you can see why, with the title of the language or the title of the lesson, how it ties into the overall Vikings, how it ties into the Norse religion, how it ties into the Germans. So that's why I have that here. All right. So let me take you to a key prophecy that some of you guys may be aware of, but let me take you here. Genesis chapter 9, verse 26 and 27. And it reads, and he said, blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem. Some of you guys would say Elohim. Some of you guys would say Yahweh Elohim. But I'm pronouncing this from the ancient pronunciation. It will be Yahweh Elohim. And when you look at Elohim in Aramaic, right, the word, you'll see Allah, which they have translated it to the word God. But you'll see Allah. And in the Syriac language and also Arabic, you see Allah. And you'll see the correlation when you hear me say Allah Hayam. All right, we'll deal with that another time. So it says, and he said, blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, this is a very important prophecy. Even in this text, it tells you that Shem was the one that stayed committed to the Most High. Shem, you can easily say that he became the priest of the brothers, among the brothers. Because it says, and he said, blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So we know that Shem had a relationship with the Most High and was blessed because of it. We know that just this alone, that the covenant had to be passed down through Shem, right? From Noah to Shem. And Noah gave the covenant to Shem when we really go into your in-depth studies of this. That's how the covenant went from, came all the way down to Abraham, because it was already in the bloodline before it got to Abraham. I mean, we can really say that Eber, who is referred to as being the father of who? The Hebrews. He was a patriarch. All right. But anyway, and he said, blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So again, remember, blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem. But let's go to the next verse. Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Guess what? Japheth is dwelling in the tents of Shem, also in the tents of Canaan. Right? When we start going into the Egyptian relics, and not just the Egyptians, when we start looking at Libya and some of those other places, because many just talk about Egypt, but they don't want to talk about Libya, because Libya, guess what? Melanated people that look just like us. So Japheth, we see Japheth, what? Whitewashing the places of worship for not just with Israel, but the Egyptians. They doing it with many of the ancient people. All right. So Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. So what is the meaning of this prophecy? I gave some of it to you, but what is the meaning of it? History tells us that this means stolen identity. So is this the reason why our people are caught between two opinions about their identity? Absolutely. This is why we're caught between two opinions. This is why we're caught in between two opinions. All right. So Hebrew definition of dwell. Let's deal with the Hebrew definition of dwell, because it said Shem, or should I say Japheth, will dwell in the tents. So when we see the word dwell in this text, in this verse, in the ancient text, you see this word Shekinah. So let's see what Shekinah means. And this is not the Shekinah. And I want to say this again, family. The word Shekinah is not biblical. That is Jewish mysticism. And matter of fact, let me play it again for those that did not catch the beginning of the presentation. Let me let you hear what they say out of their own mouths about the Shekinah. And you will see that this has nothing to do with the Most High, but everything to do with Jewish mysticism, which comes from the Maccabah mystical system. And I've taught this years ago. But let me let you hear this clip real quick.
The 10 Sefirot. One popular interpretation shows these characteristics as a map of God's body. Kabbalists believe that if they can understand God's anatomy, they can learn how his powers work. These ancient drawings reveal that God's body is similar to humans. The top symbolizes God's head, which is the source of will, wisdom, and understanding. Below that are symmetrically arranged organs and limbs, representing love, power, beauty, eternity, and splendor. The most unusual part of the diagram contains sensual imagery. The ninth part of God, called the foundation, is the phallus, or procreative life force of the universe. But according to the Sefirot, God also has female components. The final element, often called Shekinah, was depicted as the feminine half of God.
One of the great Tzvat rituals was the cult, shall I say, of the Shekinah and the cult of the divine marriage. Now, people don't really think about this when they go to temple in America and rise at the end of a certain hymn and bow and sing, "Come, O bride, come, O bride." But in fact, the Tzfat Kabbalists viewed the Friday night service and meal as a wedding feast, when the divine parts of God above unified with the earthly feminine aspect of God in the world, the Shekinah, and they had sexual union on Friday night. And this has survived into general Jewish practice to this day.
So as you see, family, as I pointed out, let me maximize this again. This is why I say words have meaning. And we're gonna add that to our list of the season 1 of Words of Confusion. Because as you just see here, and I've got other sources that I'm going to share, but the rabbi in the end, Pinchas Gillis, he said that when on Friday night service, when they're singing "Come, O Bride, Come, O Bride," the Friday night service represents the coming together, the copulation of the Ein Sof and the Shekinah. Now, in the initial video where you saw them show the diagram, that is called the Ein Sof, and it's supposed to be God before God, the body, the blueprint of what his body would be like, his body parts and the connections with that. And so when you get to the lower portion of it, the torso, that's where you see it show the yesod. In other words, that's the phallus, foundation, the male reproductive organ. Then you see what is called the Shekinah, which is supposed to be the feminine reproductive organs. So this is stating that the Most High, right, Yahweh, according to them, is a hermaphrodite. And you'll even see it in the Talmud. You'll see it in the Mishnah of describing Adam as being a hermaphrodite. All right, so we'll do a separate episode on the word Shekinah, but I just want you guys to understand, I'm not trying to bash anyone. I'm not trying to, like many would say, sneak diss or anything like that. I'm just teaching what the truth really is. And I want you to hear it for, you hear it, you bear witness. This is not me making this up. This is all Jewish mysticism. So that word Shekinah is not found anywhere in the holy text. The first writings of that word is in the Quran, right? The first writings, the early writings of it before the Quran was even written, was actually Muhammad's niece, whose name was Shekinah, and the name means tranquility. That's the earliest writing that you see of it, but it's not in the holy text whatsoever. And that's counting the Apocrypha and some of the additional books that are circulating out there. You won't find this in the book of Jasher. You won't find this in the book of Enoch. You will not find this. You don't find this word in any of the letters that the disciples wrote, as far as the testimonies of the disciples and the letters of Apostle Paul. You won't see this in the book of Revelation. All right. So not trying to draw too much time on that. But again, Shakan, this is the word that when you deal with the presence of the Most High, this is the actual word that you see in the holy text. Shakan, they added the ha at the end. When I say they, that's dealing with, Jewish writers and scribes, the Jewish community as we know it. They added the ha at the end to make the name feminine. Shekinah, right? But it's Shakan. So Shakan, right, means the idea of lodging, right? We're dealing with the primitive root word, idea of lodging, to reside or permanently stay, abide, remain, cause to remain. All right, that's what this word means. So another Hebrew word for dwell or abide, let me bring it up here. This is yashab. As you see here, to sit down, to dwell, to remain, to settle, to marry, endure, establish. So Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Let's continue to break this down. Let's go to the word tent. Right? And see on your screen, you see ohel, right? Which the actual pronunciation in ancient is ahal. So ohel versus ahal, right? It means covering. We see place or dwelling place, home, tabernacle, tent. The sacred tent of, you see here, Jehovah or Yahweh. So ahal also refers to tabernacle. Let's go to Genesis chapter 30, verse 26, just to give you a source where you would see it at. And thou shalt anoint the tabernacle, ahal of the congregation, therewith the ark of the testimony. Another word for tent or tabernacle is what we would see is called the mashkan. In the Israeli pronunciation, you see mishkan, right? But mashkan, which comes from the primitive root word shakan. So shakan, it represents the presence of the Most High, the dwelling of the Most High, but also the mashkan represents the resident, the place where he will reside. So it says a residence, dwelleth, dwelling place, habitation, tabernacle, tent. So Israel's place of worship is called a mashkan. I'm saying all of this for a reason. I'm showing you these things for a reason, because when we look at the ancient Israelites, they had a designated word for their place of worship. Ahal or mashkan. All right, Yakoba, let me see what he says here. The question is tent bayath. Well, actually, bayath, some would say Beth. That is the second language of the, letter of the Hebrew alphabets, right? Aleph, Bayath, or Alph, Beth, right? That is the second letter. And some would say that that letter represents tents because of the pictograph, right? That letter actually means bloodline. It could be also, house, household. And then when you look at the pictograph looks like an aerial view of the tabernacle, or as well as the temple. So yeah, you can also refer to the tent as the Bayath or Beth. All right, appreciate it. And that's the second letter of the Hebrew alphabets. All right, so Israel's place of worship is called a mashkan. And I'm saying this for a reason, because we're going to distinguish the difference between place of worship and the people that worship there. So we see place of worship that I just established. Here's Exodus 25, verse 8 and 9. It says this, and let them make me a sanctuary, right? Ma quadash, that I may dwell, shakan, among them according to all that I show thee after the pattern of the what? Tabernacle. Here we see mashkan. So dwell, we see shakan, right? His presence, the presence of the Most High. But then the text goes on to say, after the pattern of the tabernacle, mashkan. So we see the dwelling, to dwell, shakan, but a place to dwell, mashkan. All right. So Old Norse, and let's deal with this again. A few examples here. Let me show you the Old Norse and its influence on biblical terms. Let's start with Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. And this is a very simple but often misunderstood prophecy here. So many nuggets here. But it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name blasphemy. What's interesting, right? This beast is coming up out of the sea. Think about the Vikings. What's at the front of their ships? See, we have to go deeper in how we look at how we view the scriptures. Think about what they were known for. But then it goes on to say having 7 heads and 10 horns. So this is representing system, right? We see 10, redemption, 7, right? We see weapon, right? The 7th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Zion, right? Some would pronounce it Zayin or Zayin. That is what? The seventh letter, but it's a weapon. So out of the C, 7 heads, right, coming together to form what? A weapon. And guess what? The 10 horns, redemption. So they have a weapon, this beast, that's going to what? Go against the redemption, that the redemption that was established by the Most High. Right? And upon his 10 horns, we see what? 10 crowns. Now we're starting to see the leaders here. And upon his head, the name blasphemy. Let me say this again so you understand. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, the isle of the Gentiles. Remember, island, right? Anyway, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, weapon, and 10 horns, right? A system of what they're going to do to what? Go against redemption. They're going to have their own form of redemption, because the 10th letter is the yod, which the pictograph is what? Outstretched arms. And upon his horns, 10 crowns, leaders, people that this system has put in place. And upon his heads, the name blasphemy. Upon his heads, the name blasphemy. So name, let's break down name real quick. Let me break down this word real quick so that way you guys can understand, right? Head, the Hebrew word is, the Hebrew letter is Ra'ash, or some would say Radesh. That is the pictograph is a head. So wherever you see head in the scriptures, for the most part, you're going to see Ra'ash or Radesh. So here, let me give you proper clarity. Whenever you see the word name, right, you're going to see in Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew word Sham, or some would say Shem, right? Shem, right? Which means it could be a literal name where you see mark, memorial of individuality. That's literal name. Or it can be honor, authority, character, right? Fame, infamous, renown, report. It also means glory, as you see at the bottom of your screen here. Reputation, glory. All right. So when you actually go back to the scripture, actually, I'll take you back here. Let me go back here. Where you see here, upon his head, heads plural, the name, the reputation. This is not saying that there's a tattoo with the name blasphemy on the forehead. No, it's saying the reputation, right? The reputation that this beast is going to be known for is blasphemy. The reputation, the fame, the glory of this beast is what? Blasphemy. All right. So we dealt with the Hebrew word name. Again, it could be a literal name, or it could mean honor, authority, character, right? Renown, report, reputation, fame, glory. But let's deal with the word blasphemy, na'atizah or na'at. Let's see what it means. It says to scorn, contempt, despise, provoke. Right? So when we think of blasphemy, to scorn, and as we see here, contempt, despise, but also provoke. So upon his head, the name what? Blasphemy, going to have the reputation of what? Being scornful, contempt, going to have the reputation of being despising others, the reputation of what? Provoking, and also what? Profaning, right? Profaning. So upon his head, the name, the reputation of blasphemy. So let me share you some additional information here about the influence of the Norse on key biblical terms. Let's start with the word church. Let's deal with what part 1 is about. What did the Messiah mean when he said, upon this rock, I will build my church? I'm going to ask this question to you guys, since you guys are, we like to have a little interaction here, and you could type it inside your the comment section, and we'll give you the answer in the conclusion of this lesson. All right. So what does it mean? What did the Messiah mean when he said, upon this rock, I will build my church? Did he actually say that? That's another discussion. And actually, we're going to answer that question as well. What did the Messiah mean when he said, upon this rock, I will build my church? So what does he mean? What does he mean? All right. What does he mean? What did the Messiah mean when he said, on this rock, I will build my church? Well, I'm going to answer the question for you guys. All right. Let me break it down to you. We're going to answer this question. If you don't know, or if you're not familiar, it's nothing wrong, right? That's why we are doing what we're doing, to give you proper clarity, because truth be told, most of us didn't know this while we were inside what is called the church, because we see that word church and it was confusing, right? Is it the people? Is it the building? Because the Roman Catholics teach that this passage is dealing with the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church, and Peter is the first pope, which that is far from the truth. So this is what we'll see in the text. And I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So we know what the Most High is saying to Peter is that he's referring to Peter's testimony on this rock, on this testimony, because Peter acknowledged the Messiah as being the Son of the living Most High, of Yahweh. And he said to Peter, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. He said, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but it was the Spirit that revealed this to you. So on this rock, that rock represents his confession. It represents his testimony. That's what it means. On this testimony that you just confessed, Peter, I'm going to build up who? Did he say church? Let's answer this question. Let's deal with the etymology of the word circle. In order for us to understand what the word church means, let's start with the word circle. We'll build up to it. Circle, right? Figure of a circle. We see small ring, hoop, circular orbit. So circle, all right? A circle is a small ring, a hoop. But let's go back here. Notice what it says here, see circus. So we go from the word circle. Now we're told to see the word circus. Let's see what the word circus says. And when we go to the word circus, we see it means ring, circle, or circular line. Ring, circular line. But then when we see here, it says, which was applied to Romans in Romans to circular arenas for the performances and contests and oval courses for racing, especially the Circus Maximus. But then it says from or cognate with Greek's kirkos, a circle, a ring. Nah, family. I'm going to show you that the word circus did not come from the Greeks. But anyway, so we see circle took us to circus. But let's see what the word church means, right? All right, let me finish this up right here. It says, in reference to modern large arenas for performances. In family, words have meaning. Circle, circus, right? Large arenas for performances. Doesn't that put you in alignment of what, what we think about church today? Large arenas for performances, motivational speaking. Every sanctuary now where everyone is trying to make their sanctuary look like you're having a TED conference. Purple lights and all this stuff, trying to make it look like a TED conference. to make you feel as if you're watching a show. Performing company, hence traveling show. So remember, a circus is a ring, circle line, reference to large arenas for performances, hence traveling show. So now let's deal with the etymology of the word church. It tells us here, Old English, right? We see, remember that Proto-Indo-European tree I took you on? Notice you see these key words that are right along the Germanic trunk. English, notice what you see here, Proto-Germanic, Old Saxon, Old Norse, Old Frisian, Middle Dutch, Old High German. But they say it comes from the Greek, huh? And I'm going to show you that that's not correct. So church, public place of worship, Proto-Germanic, right? And you see all the different groups here, but it says church, public place of worship. Wait a minute. So we see public place of worship. Public place of worship. Let me say that one more time. Public place of worship. Let me go further. I'm almost there, family. I was about to put some animations here, but then it goes on to say Greek, Kyrikon, of the Lord, was used of houses of Christian worship since the 3rd century. Oh, wait a minute. Notice what it says here. We're dealing with the word church. Was used of houses of Christian worship, especially in the East, though it was less common in the sense than ecclesia or ecclesia. Wait a minute. So it's saying this word was not used, it began its use in the 3rd century. Oh, wait a minute. I hope y'all grab hold of this. See, I'm walking you guys through, family, so that way you'll be able to go back over, watch this video, and you can, whatever you may have missed, you can actually hear the explanation of it, and you can communicate it to some of your loved ones. You can articulate it in your own words. So again, it was used of houses of Christian worship since the actually 330 AD, the 3rd century. So this word was not used for people. It was used to point to the building, the physical place of worship. But let me give you the origin of the word church so you can get a better understanding of who used this word and who created this word. So is this the reason why the church today have the appearance of a circus? Because of all the things that you see taking place within there, poorly teaching what speaking in tongues is. You see all the craziness that's going on. It looks like a circus now, especially with the whole vaccine thing. It looks like a circus. Is this the reason why the church appears to be a traveling show? So many people want to take their ministry on the road and make it into like a traveling show. And unfortunately, many are lining up to get their popcorns ready so that way they can see the traveling show. All right. We're almost there, family. We are almost there. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let's go to the Dictionary of Phrase and Fable by Cobham Brewer, 1894. Let me read to you what it says. And I like to put screen prints for a reason, so you can see it on your screen and you can bear witness of it as well. So you won't think that I'm making this thing up. And you also see the source, right? This is an old source right here, 1894. What you see on the screen is a screen print of this book, 1894. 1894. All right. So let's see what this yellow stuff right here. Let's read that real quick. The etymology of this word is generally assumed. Notice what it says, generally assumed to be from the Greek kurio oikos, in other words, house of God. But this is most improbable, as the word existed in all the Celtic or the Celtic dialects long before the introduction of Greek. No doubt, the word means a circle. So circle, church means a circle. Why? Because we're referring to its physical appearance. And this is what it goes on to say. The places of worship among the Germans, right? Now we're dealing with the Norse belief system, the Celt, right? The Celts nations were always what? Circular. And it goes on to give you examples. Witness the complex of Stonehenge, Avonbury, Silbury Hill. But we're going to stay right here. Notice what it says. Complex of Stonehenge. And remember when I mentioned to you about the Anglo, and you see right here, Anglo-Saxon cirques, a church with circle, a circle. I could give some additional sources here, but I'm going to keep it simple. Notice what you see here too. And the relic shrines of India were what? Circular. So that word church has nothing to do with people, but has everything to do with a physical place of worship. So when you hear many refer to the church as being the people, that is absolutely incorrect. That is interpolating an original understanding of this word. So the places of worship among the Germans and Celtics were always circular. All right. Let me give a 3-piece right now. Let me set up a 3-piece right now. I didn't do a 3-piece yet. So let's do a 3-piece for anyone that's teaching that the word church is interchangeable with the people, because no, it's not.
What?
And let's give it a 3-piece. And let's toss it out. All right. So again, the places of worship among the Germans and Celtics were always circular. So let me show you the true image of the first church. This is the first image of the first church, Stonehenge. Because as you see, it's in a circle. This is where they did sacrifices, human sacrifices. This is how they were able to calculate the time, because not only is this place of worship is a circle, but it also is a dial to tell time, to know when the spring equinox is coming about, to know when the fall equinox is coming about, to know what's the summer solstice versus the winter solstice. They did all of this at this place. Circular. So this is the original image of the church, contrary to what anyone tell you. If anyone, any group of people that should be upset is who? The Celtics, right? Because they're like, hey, y'all done took, when they say y'all, these belief systems took their word and made it into more than what it really is. It's a physical place of worship, not the people. So church is what many would teach is a transliteration of the Greek word ecclesia. That's what many would teach. Right? We'll see this in the definition here. Ecclesia or ecclesia, right? We see it says a calling out. An example, we go on to see here religious congregation, assembly, church. This is still generic, family. But let's go into the in-depth definition of this. Entry number one. This is where we start getting a better understanding, a more accurate understanding of what the Messiah is actually saying. Because ecclesia or ecclesia means gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place, an assembly. But this is the key. In the sub-entry, the assembly of the Israelites. The Messiah was referring to the assembly of the Israelites when he said, on this rock. He didn't say church. He's dealing with the assembly of the Israelites because he said he come to bring salvation to Israel. So you cannot generalize this text and say, oh, let's throw the word church there. Let's put a generic, and now it's dealing with everybody. No, he's dealing with the called out assembly of the Israelites, assembly of Israelites, right? Assembly, kahal, or quahal, excuse me. Kal is actually all. Quahal is assembly, transliterates to the word assembly of Israelites. But let me back it up. Who is the called out? Congregation. And I'm going to give you better understanding of what congregation actually means. Who are they? Guess what? The assembly of the Israelites. So upon his head, the name of blasphemy, going back to that beast, the name blasphemy, right? Upon his head, blasphemy, because what? He's going to do what? Profane the reputation of the Israelites. Isn't that the 83rd book of Psalms? When we're dealing with the Confederate there, who made a promise among themselves, made a covenant, made a constitution to make sure the reputation of Israel is no more in remembrance. Anyway, so upon his head, the name of blasphemy. Another transliterated word for the place of worship is synagogue, which is a Greek word. Synagogue, let's see what it means. The regular public worship of the Jews, that's what it says here. Mosque, pagan temple. But remember, from the Hebrew perspective, they called it a mashkan or a hall, as I pointed out, but a mashkan. It says place of assembly, to gather, bring together, assemble. From sin, in other words, together, and it's just giving you the, the breakdown of the word. But notice what we see here: Proto-Indo-European. All right. So quahal is the Hebrew word for assembly. Let me say that again. Quahal is the Hebrew word for assembly. Right. Notice when you see congregation, when you go to the etymology, it says what? A gathering assembly. That's why this word could be another one of those words of confusion. And I'm going to show you why. The Hebrew definition of assemble. This is what it says. Quahal. Assemble together, simply. To convoke, assemble selves together, gather selves together. To assemble, gather. So when we see the word quahal, we're dealing with what? The people gathering together. Another word I want to highlight, right? You'll see the word adah, right? I like to use the word idath because when I go to the ancient Hebrew, because you're taught in Israeli language that tha at the end represents, translates to the word of. But when you look at the word tha, this letter tha, it means evidence. It means proof. So when you put these letters together to form this word idath means witness. I'm going to break this down. I'm getting ahead of myself. Idath means witness. And each letter is going to bear witness of what? An assembly being what? Witnesses. So idath is the ancient Hebrew word for congregation. Here's the Hebrew word for definition of it, right? You'll see Ada, right? This is the Saray, right? And it makes the A sound. That's a whole nother teaching, right? So, A-da. All right, that's how you pronounce this. Edah. So it says assembly, company, congregation, multitude, people, swarm. Now I'm going to show you a text that it doesn't make sense to have assembly and congregation transliterated in the way that we would think. So let's take it a step further. Congregation. Let's go a step further. Right? When you go to Edah, right, you'll see another entry for Edah, which gives you more of an understanding. It says testimony, witnesses. So you have assembly, which is Quahal, and you see for testimony, right, where you see that word congregation, you will see Idath, right? Even though this say Edah, we're just not going to confuse you, just keeping it simple. But we see testimony, witnesses. Now we're getting a better understanding. Now, if we go to the primitive root, this is what we see the primitive root. You see aid, right? Or ad, which means witness, testimony, specifically a recorder. Wait a minute. Witness, testimony, a recorder. Now let's bring this together. So congregation, Idath. Now, if you want to do it in the Israeli language and drop this tha, and we just say ad, it's still going to tell you it means witness. But when we put the tha, and I'm going to show you the breakdown of each letter, it means witness of people, a witness of people, evidence. Let's bring it down. Let's break it down. The first letter, the ayan, means eye, sight, watch. The second letter, door, gate, lid. The last letter, sign, mark, evidence. So guess what? You cannot be a witness, a good witness, if you don't have what? Eye or great sight. That's one of the characteristics. They want to get a testimony from the witness based upon what they have seen. Then when you see door, dalath, right? In the Israeli daleth, but the ancient pronunciation dalap, you see here door, gate, lid. That means that door, right? You have your eyes, but then you have the lids to help you focus. So you see a great witness have to make sure that they are clear what they have seen and that they are focused. And then in the end, you'll be able to be able to actually give accurately the sign, the mark. You'll be able to bear witness, give the true evidence with clarity. Now, I just used the letters them just alone to give you the proper definition of what this word idath means. Some would just say idah, but I'm just giving you from an ancient Hebraic perspective, right? So who are the witnesses, idath, of the people? It's the whole kal, assembly, quahal, of the congregation, idath of Israel. Actually, a proper translation of this will be the whole assembly of the witnesses of Israel. See, family, this is the first time in the scriptures you see that Israel is being referred to as a kingdom of witnesses. As a kingdom of what? Witnesses. In order to be a great witness, you have to be a great recorder. Remember, we saw recorder. Recorder, that's the characteristics of a great witness, is how you record the information. So when judgment comes, guess what? It's going to be based upon the playback, right? Because you're going to have all you guys, every last one of us are recorders. But when the Most High played back your life, what is it going to say? What is it going to bear witness? Are you a good witness? Did you do all the things that he said to do? How do you test if you had a good recording? Is in the playback. How the Most High is going to test that each and every one of us are who we say we are is going to be through the playback. Anyone can say that they're a good witness, but it's the playback. It's when you go through that investigation, when you're dealing with trials, they have to do what? Talk to the witnesses to make sure that they are credible before they even put them on a witness stand. So the whole kal, assembly, quahal of the what? Congregation, actually witnesses of Israel. So what is the congregation of Israel? An assembly, quahal of witnesses. An assembly of witnesses. Israel, we are an assembly of witnesses. Now, let me bring this home with scripture. Exodus chapter 12, verse 6. Let's bring it all together. And ye shall keep, and this is dealing with the Passover, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly, right? Notice you see call, whole assembly, quahal of the congregation of Israel. Idath Yashara'al shall kill shakat it in the evening, Arab. So we see again, this is the whole assembly of witnesses, Israel, the Israelites, the whole assembly of witnesses, Israel, the whole assembly of the witnesses of Israel, however you want to read it. But that word congregation, because it can be confusing, it's assembly of congregation. No, of the congregation. No, the assembly of witnesses. So the Messiah is saying on his rock, he's going to build what? His assembly, his whole assembly of what? Witnesses. Why? Because Peter bore witness of him right then and there. That's why he said, on this rock, I will build my whole assembly, my called out assembly, my whole assembly of witnesses, the Israelites, based off of what? Your testimony, the playback, Peter. Family, I just gave you a proper understanding of what that text actually means with scripture, with clarity. So we are not a church. We are not a synagogue. We are living witnesses of the blood descendants of Israel. We are an assembly, quahal, ourselves who assemble ourselves in the temple. We assemble, quahal, ourselves in the temple, ahal or mashkan, where the Most High dwells, shakan. I'm just giving you the Hebrew words we covered today. And when we come together, we are what? Preparing ourselves for spiritual warfare, like when we see in Exodus chapter 12 for the first time. Israel was preparing for spiritual warfare. Why? Because the death angel was going to come over and pass judgment on all of the land. Goshen, where they dwelt, was still part of Egypt. So that angel was coming to what? Pass judgment. So Israel was preparing this awesome assembly of witnesses came together, prepared themselves for spiritual warfare. Hallelujah. So what did the Hebrew Israelite Messiah mean when he said, upon this rock I will build my church? Actually, what he actually stated and what the proper understanding from a Hebraic school of thought is his whole call of assembly, quahal, of witnesses, idath of Israel, Yashara'al. So most would say it refers to all who are not Jews. No, that's not correct. I put partially. No, that's not correct. It's not, I'm just making it clear that's not correct. This is all starting with the blood descendants of the called out Israelites. And yes, among the Israelites, you have those that are not blood descendants of Israel among the Israelites who became citizens because they embraced the covenant, the constitution, the Most High established with the Israelites. And there we have it, family. That's the end of the presentation. I hope and pray that this was very edifying for you. I hope this gave you clarity. I hope this really touched on those words of confusion, as we just pointed out. I hope this gave you proper clarity on exactly what the text means. And I just pray that you guys go back over. If you have any questions, make a note of it and share this lesson. Share it on your Facebook channels. Share it on your YouTube channels. So again, family, this bear witness of who? We being the people. We're supposed to be the witnesses, the called out assembly of the Most High. We're supposed to be a kingdom of priests, every last one of us. A kingdom of priests, because each one of us represents the Most High, no matter where we are. So with that being said, family, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Share the video, hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. As Moses said to the children of Israel in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, as the Egyptians were closing in on them and they had the waters before them, he said, fear ye not, stand still. See the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to deal with them ever again. Will never have power over you again. They may exist, but they will never have power over you again. Whatever it may be, it may exist in somewhere, some other territory, but not in your life. Will not have influence over you anymore. Will not have power over you anymore. The Most High will fight for you, but you have to hold your peace. And in that text, Karash. Karash is what you see in that text, not Shalom, or some would say Shalom. You will see Karash, which means be quiet. So you shall what? Be quiet. Can't go back. Can't stay here. Keep moving forward.